Welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe. I'm an advisor, author, and general explorer of the service and experience space. My guests tend to have just released some interesting research. They run a company that has some interesting tech in the service and experience space. They are part of an organization that is doing some cool stuff, or they run their own business doing interesting things for both their customers and or their employees. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have really excited to talk to this young lady who is Connie Kalcher, who is the CCO of Zurich Insurance, no less. Hello, Connie. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, hi, Adrian, and thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, Connie, I could find and read a big long kind of bio and go blah, blah, blah. Connie's done this, Connie's done that. But actually, it's always best to hear from the person themselves. So I wonder if you can give our listeners a bit of a thumbnail sketch on you and the work that you do, where you're coming from, and so on and so forth.
I can give it a try for sure. So I've been in the space of customer experience for most of my career. I started out working for Lego in Denmark and worked with them for 33 years in different positions, most of them actually about driving the customer experience or the brand, those kinds of new business areas.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed my time at Lego and had many, many challenges there that was super exciting to work on. Then I was thinking, okay, I've been 33 years with Lego. I think I'm done with corporate life. So let me see what else is around in the world. So I took a little break and then worked in property development for a while. And then this opportunity with Zurich came up and I thought, wow, that's exciting. Working in an industry that's not traditionally customer focused, let me see if I can do something with that. And then I got the opportunity to build a very strong customer team and to drive the agenda across the business globally. With Zurich. So it's been interesting to be in two very different industries, one that's fast-moving consumer goods and one that's financial industries, and see how you can actually move some of your learnings from one to the other.
Perfect. I mean, it's they sucked you back in, Connie. But I guess also that it must be all this experience with Lego, and then also. And a lot of success with it. Lego's a very successful brand. And now then to try and apply some of your experience and thinking to quite an old and very established kind of company as well. So, it's quite a different kind of challenge. And we were talking before this and you talked about your job is to transform customer experience at Zurich Insurance. And you talked to me about your ambitions. And you mentioned you want Zurich to become the Apple of insurance. And I was like, what? Okay, let's roll back a little bit. The Apple of insurance? I'm like, well, that's a bit of a big statement, big vision. So can you explain to me what you mean by that and why you picked such a grand vision? Because that's a big old thing to say, right?
Yeah. I think Apple is just a symbol of what we should be thinking of or what we should be doing. But it is, I think we can almost live a self-fulfilling prophecy if we think that we have nothing to offer or we will just be technically very strong, but never really make an emotional connection to our customers. So by using the Apple example, it's more to say that actually in any industry you are into today, to really be successful with customers, you need to understand their needs. You need to connect with them on a practical level, but also on an emotional level for them to start understanding and loving your brand. So it's about saying something that's big and bold in order to really try to transform who we are. And I believe that the insurance industry has kind of undersold itself for years by having a very negative narrative or not confirming the real value the insurance industry brings. And I think we have a story to tell and we have a role to play to change that, to transform us into demonstrating to our customers that we are really understanding them. And if you think about us as a company, we've been around for 150 years as Zurich.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gone through wars, world wars. We have gone through economic crisis. We're still around. So we clearly have found out how to adapt to customers over time. And so I'm really building on that legacy of saying, okay, but the current transformation is a different one than the previous ones.
Sure.
And the current transformation has a lot to do with being digitalized, being there for customers where they want you, and to adapt to customers actually having more choices today. And
Sure.
you need to be relevant of the customers today, not of the customers we had like 20 years ago.
But I also think I think that's, I love the idea, just the pitching it as the Apple of insurance. I mean, because I think that's, you can build this vision and you can communicate, and it's not, I don't think it would be a vision that you're communicating to your kind of customers. That's almost like a rallying call in many ways, for internally. So like, we would like to be this. This is an aspirational sort of thing. And this is, people then internally build an emotional connection sort of to that. And because you realize you're on a journey towards that. And I think that's really kind of like useful. But I think the thing that's what was also interesting to me when we were talking, you were talking about this big vision, and some people get caught up in that big vision and it's all for that. But you were like also saying, well, actually, we need to respect where we've come from and our existing kind of customers, and actually bring them kind of with us. And then there was, because you also talked about this, and I think this is something that I think Lego recognized as well, as like it's all about building on your customer kind of base, and building that loyalty and connectedness, stickiness, as it were, and weaving yourself into their story of their lives. And you told me this thing, your guiding philosophy related to all of that is that a 1% increase in customer retention equals a 0.5% revenue increase. That was a bit like, I love a bit of a statistic myself. And also that something that sort of like smells of ROI type of things. I'm like, ooh, because that can be quite elusive within that whole customer sort of like space. People start talking about NPS and CSAT and everything else, but actually it's business and commercial outcomes that really count and really get people's attention, and also allow you to get other things done when you start delivering those commercial returns. So what I wanted to ask is that 1% increase in customer retention equals a 0.5% revenue increase. Can I ask, is that ratio based on research, experience, kind of, because just to give us a bit of a sense of that?
Yeah, well, it's an internal calculation, and of course it's kind of not fully bulletproof. But it gives us an indication of what the value is. I think since we came up with this number, we have refined that even further. So we have introduced something called net revenue retention that was originally launched by Fred Reichheld, who was the inventor of NPS.
Sure.
And he realized that NPS is very difficult to link NPS, as you said. It's a fluffy metric to actual financial results. So he's evolved his thinking, and we are kind of putting into practice his new measurement, which is NRR, or earned growth rate. So here we are able, together with our colleagues in finance, to link our gross written premiums to our customer base and their behaviors. So we can now measure across our countries the value our loyalization strategy is driving. So that's something much more specific per country, and it's linked to drivers. So it's linked to understanding the actions that they are taking. So how many customers did they lose? How many customers were they able to sell more products to based on their needs? And so it's much more refined in the whole customer walk. And by teaming up with the people in finance, I think that's something very key to us in marketing and in CX. That the more we can team up with our colleagues and together create data and insights that drives behavior to benefit our customers, the better. So it's an unusual alliance, I think, especially in finance. But once you start speaking in financial terms, it's easier to get your message across. It's easier to get funding for what you need to get funding for, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, we start speaking the same language much closer. And I really like that.
I think I think that's great. And it mirrors a theme that I've heard before on the podcast, where people that are in the sort of marketing customer experience space, particularly in a corporate environment, have to realize that, yes, you have end customers that you're trying to serve and make things better for, but you also have customers along the way, internal customers. And one of the biggest set of customers, or one of the biggest customers internally, is your finance department.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
And somebody kind of said something very sage once on the podcast, and they said, well, somebody would say, the first thing you should do is go and either speak to customers or speak to people that deal with customers, and do that on an hourly, daily basis. If that's the first thing in the first hour of the first day of a new job, that's the first thing that you should do. I was like, okay, that's fair enough. So the second thing that you should do, if that was in the morning, is in the afternoon, go and hang out with finance and go find out what's on their radar, what's important, what are the things that they're looking for, because then you manage those two different and very key sort of like stakeholder kind of groups.
Yeah.
So I think that's really sage advice.
I think I would even combine it with one more person or one more partner in the organization, and that's your head of IT. So the more marketing links to IT, the more we link to finance, the more synergy we get across everything we do. And it's getting inspired both ways. It's us inspiring out, but it's also getting the inspiration back. As you said, the dialogue is super important. But at the end of the day, we're here to create results. Yeah. And for me, it's paramount to these results are created for our customers. So if I can measure that impact, that helps not only the customers, but it helps us do the right thing for customers.
Fantastic. I think that's absolutely right. And so maybe we can design a day which is going hang out with customers or people serving customers, having lunch with IT, and then going to hang out in finance in the afternoon.
Yeah, I like that. I think that hanging out with customers is super important.
Yeah.
Probably the most important of all, because that's kind of also the role of any marketing function or any customer function, is to bring that voice of the customer into the organization. Mm-hmm. Because organizations are always tempted to be talking about themselves or doing projects that is important for a department or doing things that are really important for employees. But at the end of the day, all of that needs to point towards being better at servicing our customers.
Yeah.
And that's a discipline. The more we learn that, the better outcomes I think we will have.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. It's like, in a world that is dominated by sort of data, analytics and dashboards and things. And I think it's something that actually, there's a guy called Martin Lindstrom who wrote a book called Small Data, who referenced Lego. Mm-hmm. And his experience with kind of Lego and the Lego story is how actually that's keeping connected to that sort of small data, the visceral sort of insights that you get from speaking to customers or observing them or hearing stories from people that are working directly with customers to help them either serve them or help them solve a problem or so on and so forth. Those are really essential kind of insights, and something that anybody that works in service or experience or marketing, whatever, should not accept those insights from anybody on a second-hand or third-hand basis. That's something you almost have to own yourself. You have to own the responsibility for collecting and learning that insight yourself.
Absolutely. And so you feel it. I always say that sort of feedback is great. Bad feedback is a gift. Mm-hmm. Because if you should celebrate the bad feedback, because that's really where you learn. that's where you need to take the clues from. Okay, so we're good at that, but we're not so good at these things. How do we improve those? And that constant learning process based on insights, I think, is super important. So what Lego was very good at was not only to take survey input from customers, but actually co-create with customers and bring the community of fans very, very close. So I remember a meeting we had in the beginning where we started to bring Lego ambassadors, which were representatives of the community, closer to the business to hear their voice and to do the right thing for them. And we had this meeting with them. So it was the whole top team of Lego, and these fans came in to kind of speak about what they thought we should do differently. So they had made this amazing PowerPoint presentation, and it was all very polite. It was all very nice. These are all the great things we're doing together. And then once they'd gone through that, our CEO at the time, Jørgen Vig, who was an amazing CEO, he kind of said, okay, let's put the PowerPoint away and then tell us what you really, really don't like.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're here to hear. And then they were saying, well, what we really, really don't like is the fact that the colors on the bricks are not always the same. So various production batches will have a different color. So when I build a big wall, it's not the same red. That is gold.
Yeah.
That is golden nugget of an insight. And it really changed how we were doing the coloring and how we were checking and color matching. So that, I think that's the strength of a good company, a strong brand, is really being curious enough to ask for the really, really bad things that we need to fix.
I mean, and it almost is, it's what's fascinating about that sort of idea, that sort of approach, is we're not particularly good at that, sort of seeking out the, tell us what we're bad at.
Yeah.
We're not good at that. And I wonder if, going back to what we're talking about, this sort of your ratio around the earned growth rate and the 1% and 1.5%, I was like, how is that some of the things that you're doing, trying to identify kind of, I call it the grit in our experience? I mean, is that part of what you're doing in terms of trying to build this loyalty in this increasingly competitive and quite precarious landscape? You know, because in building that loyal foundation, is that part of what you're doing kind of now in Zurich?
Yeah, it's very much part of wanting to get closer to what is working and what's not working. And so we've been measuring net new customers for a while. But if you have a business that ranges from a customer buying protection from their smartphone or a person buying protection from their smartphone to a company ensuring their international business, you can't really counting customers, doesn't really make sense. So actually this net revenue retention makes a lot more sense, because it's the value we are creating, is that the number of customers. So, and it gives us a lot of insights. So it gives us, where are we good? Where do we have challenges? Are we good at acquiring new customers? Or are we good at loyalizing customers? And if we are, how do we do it? Where are we good at it? Where are we not? And how do we share those learnings? So I think data is king in any position. So the more you know about your data and understand your customers, the better equipped you are to make the right decisions. So we have a global database of all the customer data. So it's anonymized, so it's not really infringing on anybody, but it's really understanding customer behavior, customer data, and then serving up information to the business that will help them make better decisions for customers. That's really what we're all about.
But also, at the beginning, you were talking about building connections with people and building connections with people's to life. And I know that over the last number of years, we've seen this big push to digitalization, you know, and people having digital sort of experiences. But for the longest time, while as large brands, or anybody really, any brand has pushed into this sort of like space, there's been a lot of pushback from customers saying, well, that's all great, but it feels increasingly humanless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been going on for a number of years now. And so I guess my question would be is like, so how are, as a globally large and significant brand as Zurich is, with this focus on, growing the business, but also retention and building an engaging and connecting, relevant experience. How are you creating these humanizing digital experience? How are you balancing technology and the human kind of touch? Because that's just tricky, right?
Yeah, it is tricky, and I think it's a very valid point. And that's where the customer officer needs to play a keen role. So, since I come from a different industry where we linked very strongly to our customers on an emotional basis as well,
mm-hmm.
we do this on two sides. So we work on the emotional connection, and then we work on creating seamless experiences. So I believe in AI can play a strong role. I believe in digitalization, but I think it needs to be done based on what's the user story. What is it we are trying to do differently for customers with this? Mm-hmm. So if we want to make the claims experience seamless for the customer, we need to start with what matters to them. Okay, so they want speed, they want seamless. How can AI help with that? And how can we then introduce it so it benefits the customer? That's one side. The other side is we've just done segmentation in 14 countries in mm-hmm. order to, a customer is not a customer, is not a customer. They're different segments mm-hmm. and they have different needs and they want to be served differently. So if you're, without making any kind of generalization too much, so younger generations are more leaning against the digital experience. Older generations are leaning more towards getting an agent or advice mm-hmm. from a person. So our job is to not make that generalization as I just did, but really understand it customer by customer and saying, well, this person wants to be served this way. So we need to be there for them where they want to be served. This person has a different need, so we need to offer that to them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think we are in the middle of implementing across the organization, that understand the customer base and service them the way they want to be serviced. And then at the same time, we're doing lots of process improvements in the back. Mm-hmm. And all of these process improvements in our back ends and portals that we're launching for customers, etc., that is there to, again, for them. So it doesn't start with an IT implementation. We have no project called digitalization, but we have projects that are called improving the customer journey, launching a customer app, improving the customer experience, those kinds of projects, or developing a loyalty system for our customers to service their needs. So it's not IT implementation. It's improvement for customers, but it's still necessary because we can cut down the claims experience from weeks to actually 24 hours, as we have done in Japan. So that's what the customer want. They want a quick resolution. They don't want to be on the phone 5 times to sort a claim out. We can do a lot with photos today. So it's putting these things in place where it matters to the customer rather than efficiencies on our side. That's one side. The other side that we're also doing is we're doing a lot of empathy training.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are trying to address the thing with the heart as well. Mm-hmm. So it is about, for the people that then have the interaction with our customers, how do we help them to start with the customer first? Tune into, where is the customer? What are they feeling? What do we need to help them with? And we're doing that, and we're seeing the results coming out of that. We do it a lot with role-playing and actors coming in and demonstrating how you can tackle a situation in one way and another way. And then what we see after this training is that the scores, NPS scores, goes up 10, sometimes 20 points.
Okay.
But a side benefit which is a wonderful side benefit, is that the teams work better together. Because empathy also works when you work with colleagues. So thinking about what kind of personality are they and how can I help? So I think we every company needs to address both of these sides. And basically all people in the front line or wherever they are basically do want to do the right thing for customers.
Mm-hmm.
They like doing the right thing. So how can we help them do that? How can we tell them it's not about making the shortest call, getting them off the phone, reading your script, but it's really about taking the call as long as it needs to be, but engage. So if they call in and cancel their motorcycle insurance, talk about their motorcycle trips, understanding whether do they do that with a heavy heart, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the human side of things that we need to bring to the table as well.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I think oftentimes people talk about the need for more empathy, or in many ways, just being able to create the space to really listen to somebody and to be interested in them and to hear them and to see them.
Yes.
But oftentimes kind of process and metrics and KPIs can squeeze, almost like squeeze the juice out of that. And sometimes you just need to create a little bit of space for these little connections and these little stories to happen, and then support people, but then not just assume that these things are going to happen. Sometimes you actually have to nudge them or equip them or support them to be able to do that. So just because you create the space doesn't mean to say that it's going to, people are equipped and feel comfortable.
No.
To do that.
And we of course have difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Think about somebody who's a life insurance. You sometimes lose a loved one, and then you need to kind of deal with that. And so there are difficult situations. Do you know Zappos?
Yeah, I know Zappos.
Yeah. So they sell shoes in America, and everybody, when they started out, everybody said that's not possible. You want to try on your shoes. You want to do things that are physical. You can't sell it online. But they were very famous for actually saying, we are celebrating the longest call. We will stay on the call until the customer feel they're being helped. If they want 10 pairs of shoes sent out to try them on, we will send them 10 pairs of shoes. And we will react if somebody tells us a sad story and send them flowers. To me, they really got the gist of what it means to be a customer focused organization. They took it to the extreme. They got very famous about it. But I went there, I visited their contact centers, and it was like a joy. These people were hired to bring joy to their customers. That's where I like to get to. I think insurance has a very strong role to play in people's lives, especially with climate change and other threats from wars and what have you. There's more threats. There are more risks around people today. So we have a different role to play, and we can do it with a human face. We have very strong values in Zurich, and the more we bring those values out also to the customers, the better we will be. And it's about winning hearts and minds, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know some people that at Zappos, and I've done the tour myself, and I would recommend, I'd recommend going to Las Vegas to do the tour. I mean, forget the strip and the casinos and all these different sort of things. I mean, I'd go there just for that because I'm a little bit of a nerd that way. But yeah, no, it's a wonderful place, and incredibly experimental and free and crazy, but brilliant in equal measure. And so I'm glad to hear that you've kind of you've had a significant experience there, like I did. So which is great.
It really changed my outlook for sure going there, and it seems to have done the same for you.
Yeah, no, so I think it's a wonderful place. So I mean, that's brilliant, and I love to hear kind of what I love hearing about what you're doing. I mean, but I'm guessing with the kind of many kind of like big projects, you're also looking forwards. And I wonder if I could ask you to draw on your experience and tell me about What you see coming down the track? Well, I mean, what are some of the big trends and technologies that you think are going to drive and shape the future of sort of customer experience or this space? And what are you doing to prepare for those?
Of course, the obvious thing is AI is of course everywhere, and we have been working with large language models for some time now to help us in various cases in analyzing claims, for example, or in analyzing big numbers of data for a claims handler when they deal with a claim in commercial insurance. They have to spend a lot of time to go through all the details, and we have some models that help them with that. And then we experiment, more and more. And another example that's more customer facing is we've launched a new tone of voice. So you probably know from your own interactions with insurance companies that we can be talking in very complicated language with acronyms and legalese language, et cetera. So we kind of set out some principles for how to communicate in a simpler, clearer way. And so that we call the tone of voice strategy. And we're rolling that out across the group. And you can imagine that every country has thousands of documents, thousands of ways of talking and engaging with customers that they need to change. So for that purpose, we kind of introduced a new tool, which is an AI tool based on these tone of voice principles. Helps take a existing text and translate it into a text based on these principles, so it's easy to write. So we use that in the process. We have it in 6 languages, and then the person changing the documents will put the human eye on the proposal, of course, and say, is this right? Is this right? Not right. But it speeds up the process, but it speeds up in order for us to have a clear tone of voice to our customers, which I'm desperate for us to get. So I think AI in various applications, internally for efficiencies, but towards customers, is really to improve their lives or to improve their interaction with us. So it needs to start with, what are we trying to achieve for the customer? How will the customer benefit? So AI, I think, is a big thing, but we should always keep the customer in mind. We should not be just charmed by the opportunities with it. We just discussed whether we should allow our own people to kind of use AI to do advertising, and we don't think so. We have a policy around AI and how we use it ethically, of course, but also there's always this need. But we could also use it for. So the success comes from kind of taking it slow, A/B testing, trying things out, but be very cautious of actually getting close to using other people's IPs or kind of creating images that are not human or feels constructed.
Yeah.
So as I said, I think AI is a big topic for me. Data analytics, behavioral science is a key too. How can we learn from customers' behaviors to improve the services we're delivering, or to actually just service them better on propositions, products, etc. So we're not just about protection; we're also about prevention and services and all of that. The more we understand about their behaviors, the more we can help. It might sound a bit broader, but it's not thought of like that. It's more the benefit we can give back to the customers.
I mean, I think ultimately, so it comes under that overarching thing you talked about. That goes back to what you talked about before. Is like a lot of this growth is underpinned by your earned growth rate. That's sort of the net revenue retention. And if you're always looking for, if you're always trying to sell people something, and you're always pushing, then that's it ends up being quite a short road.
Yes.
So you end up having to think about things and like, yes, about expanding your portfolio and growing sales and things else, but actually doing things in a in a valuable way, in a way that makes sense sort of for people,
Yeah.
that has their best interests at heart. I'm really pleased that you're also using kind of that technology to demystify some of the complicated kind of language that is used, particularly around what things mean and terms and
Yes.
conditions and things, because I think that's going to be very welcome. But I think but I like the idea that it's like you're drawing all these different things, but also as a brand that is ostensibly an expert in risk assessment, which is kind of what insurance is. And you're one of the
Yes.
biggest insurers, to actually have said, we're not going to do that there. And I think that can be one of the hardest things to do.
Mhm.
Like you say, is like, don't get carried away by the possibilities, but to actually go yes to that, no to that, and a definitive no to that. We're not going to use it in advertising because we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. And coming at it from a perspective of we're doing risk assessment, I think that feels quite important.
Yeah. For sure. Mm-hmm.
And I just think, I think it feels quite important. And I'm thinking, I think people should pay attention to that.
I think that's what a brand is. A strong brand knows what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the school I went to when I grew up during my years at Lego. We were very clear about what's right and what's wrong. And it's not blurring those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I think here at Zurich, we are similar. We're also very clear about what's right for our brand. What do we stand for? What values do we have? So let's not cross that line. And also, we have had the most successful run ever the last 6 years. It's been one record result after the other, which proves that some of these choices have been right. That we have made. But it's always a learning. It's not like, you arrogantly can lean back and say, we're always right. Of course we're not. But the more you discuss it, the more you relate to it, the more you make those choices, I think the better.
Yeah. So, Connie, thank you for that. That's super interesting. I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to highlight or point to that about the Zurich's approach and your plans and things before I ask you some wrap-up questions?
Yeah, maybe I'd like to say that it's a transformation, and it's not like we have all the answers. We are on a journey to become what we think is right for our customers in the future, because we believe in loyalization. We believe strongly in, if we treat the customers we have today the right way, and if we deliver what they're expecting, because the industry is being disrupted from other sides, from techs doing different things, customer experience much faster, fully digitalized, digitally native. We're this old super tanker that we're trying to turn around and become a speedboat. So it's a longer journey. But even if it's a long journey, it's a really a necessary journey to go through, and it actually never ends, to be honest. There will always be new needs. There will always be new challenges that we need to choose. So I don't think we tend sometimes to think we go through this period of 2 years is all tied up and beautiful. No, it's a life journey. But of course, we need to show results along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sometimes, because of the point you're talking about, the transformation, people think about transformation, and sometimes think about it in terms of projects. It's like, it's a project, and once it's done, then the transforming is done. And you're like, and because of that misunderstanding, misappropriation of the term and things, I often say to people, it's like, can we stop talking about transformation and can we talk about evolution instead? And actually, evolution is not necessarily linear, and it has different gradients depending on the different periods you're in, but you're always changing.
Yes.
And I think I believe it's a more useful way of talking about it, because you just put yourself away from all the other transformation conversations, and you don't get lost in that fog.
Yeah. I would agree with you at one level that that it is more true, but it's depending on your challenge though.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, there must be some sense of speed.
Uh-huh.
There must be some sense of urgency. And if your base is low in an area, you do need some transformation, and then it moves into more kind of the more regular evolution.
Yeah.
So I think if I started this role and not talked about transformation, I think we would have been slower. So
right.
you also need, because we have the results, we don't have a burning platform.
Mm-hmm.
So then you do need to talk about something. But once you're over that first hump, then I'm totally in agreement with you. Then that's a more productive way of thinking about it. It never stops. It does continue.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Absolutely. It's about urgency and injecting the right level of urgency at the right sort of time. Because like you said, it's like Zurich is a super tanker, right? And you're in a game of creating momentum.
Yes.
And it's a 1 degree shift is still a 1 degree shift. And it's going to be hard to kind of to move it, just because it's such an object of such an enormous kind of mass. But when you create that shift, then there's no stopping you. And it's that, and that it's easier to build on that when it's principles of physics, right? When you start creating, when you break the bonds of inertia and you create momentum, then you can build on it from there.
Absolutely. And it's also about enabling the organization, because it can't be coming from one department or one person. It has to be, how do we create change by enabling the organization and the people to do the right thing at the right time.
Perfect. So, Connie, a couple of quick fire questions to wrap up, if I may. So,
yes, for sure.
We've talked about a bunch of things. At the end of these conversations, I always like to ask people to boil things down, because we're a takeaway sort of generation. So, if we were to boil everything down, what would be your best advice to someone listening in that wants to improve their customer experience?
Make sure that you start with deep customer understanding, great data to hand, and act with urgency.
There you have it. 3 things: deep understanding, great data, act with urgency. Fantastic. So my second question, and I guess it would be remiss of me not to ask a punk-related question, given this is the Punk CX kind of podcast.
Yeah.
But what company or brand do you think takes a more of a punk approach to customer experience, or is maybe somebody who is what I would call an experienced leader, and why? Who's like leading it? Who's got it all knitted together? Who do you think actually they're pretty interesting? I really like what they're doing.
Well, I think Amazon is, on one level, a very good example from the whole service experience that they, and the ecosystem they have knitted together, that kind of keeps you with them. And they make some bold moves. So on one hand, they're very good. On the other hand, if you try to ring them and get some customer service, is totally impossible. So they do some things good, but then they also not so much on some other things. My all-time favorite was Virgin Atlantic in the early days.
Okay.
When they were totally revolutionizing travel, business travel, and really looking at what are the key pain points for a business traveler and how we're going to make that great. They were the first ones with the lounges. They were the first one that was like living room lounges. And then they were the first rooms, they had masseuses they would give you a neck massage on the plane. They had their own check-in line, so you didn't have to queue, all of that. Since then, they kind of not really kept up on that, but they really were unique at that point. And then Zappos, as I mentioned before, Zappos is a unique company in that space.
Perfect. Well, some 3 great examples that are, well, they're just, great examples, and sometimes examples that have shone brightly for a while for their own reason, but that also can illustrate that it's it's hard to be great consistently over a long period of time. That's some task.
It is. And keeping it up. If you've been a role model for a long time, then how do you keep it up? That's why I think as marketeer or customer people, we need to take our inspirations from many different industries, from many different companies. It's not one person or one company that has all the answers. It comes to you from many different angles. I just went and saw the Adele concert in Munich.
Okay.
And have they got the customer experience right down to a T for what a future concert will be? It's not just about the actual performance. It's what goes before. It's the way the stadium is designed. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think what we need to do, we need to immerse ourselves in those kinds of experiences. So inspiration comes from many places. It doesn't just come from business. It comes from many places in order to be leading the pack in what customer experiences going to be.
Indeed. Love it. So, Connie, that's all I have for today. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time and insight and your experience with us today. Congratulations on the success that you've had to date, and long may it continue. And just thank you for the wonderful conversation. That's been awesome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, but also I enjoyed this exchange of ideas. Very inspirational. Thank you.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.